Hello and welcome to this episode of Paula's Run Club with me, Paula Radcliffe.
And me, Christopher Dobson.
And very aptly this time off the back of many of you who will have run in the New York City Marathon and other marathons recently, we are talking again to Wendy Rogers, who's going to give us all of that valuable information on fueling as you recover post-marathon and on fueling as you go through that training cycle and during the race itself. So, Tomo, as I mentioned, packed couple of weeks, actually for both of us, well, final 10 days or so. You've been up a mountain in Switzerland with the on junior running team, if that's correct.
Youth camp, yeah, yes.
I was in New York, bringing in a whole bunch of stuff. And I do want to give a massive shout out. Can't put every single one of you onto the honours board, but all of those people who came along to the shakeout in Central Park on Friday afternoon, a huge thank you. It was a brilliant turnout, brilliant atmosphere. We got to run back up the course, see the finishing area, and kind of run along the final part of the course as you come through Central Park and get everybody fired up, ready for it. So I really hope everybody's races went very well. And we'd like to hear from you on how that went, please.
I mean, how was I meant to pause? So
No.
I can ask you a question. Okay, I never know anymore. I've lost. How does it feel like to you, just being on that final stretch and running up it with people, and just do you go back to that place where when you've won that race? Have you and had those incredible battles? Do you actually go back there in your head?
Definitely. I mean, without a doubt, anyway, Central Park is one of my favourite places to run in the world. And this time of year, around marathon time, it is beautiful. The leaves are changing colour. The sky is still a brilliant blue as it was for our shakeout. So there is, if you look at some of the footage that we got there, it's extremely motivating. But you're absolutely right. And it's one of my big bits of advice to people is when you're having a good run, and things are going well, kind of bottle those memories a little bit, because it's great to tap into when things aren't going so well, when you're feeling tired, when you're having a rough time for emotional reasons or for whatever reason. It's really good to go back to those happy memories and kind of get the little boost that comes with that. And you're absolutely right. That stretch for me up to Tavern on the Green is somewhere that I'm always going to feel better. And it was funny when we were doing the shakeout, one of the guys noticed that we were actually right underneath the flag, which was me alongside Paul Tergat, kind of in 20 odd years ago, and they bring all those out and kind of decorate the final mile or so with lots of encouraging and motivating posters. And it was just
the Hall
funny
of Fame, the Hall of Fame ones.
Yeah, and it was just funny that they picked that one to kind of we stopped to take a group picture under it, and then someone said, "Look up, we picked really well with this one."
Bless. I mean, and you look no different today as you did 20 years ago. That's the incredible thing. But like we got rewarded with one of the most crazy finishes in the men's race, Matiso and Kipruto. But I guess, what was that like in the moment? But also, obviously, you were part of that incredible finish with Wami, sorry.
Well, it's funny because I was at the finish line with Joan Benoit Samuelson and with Mary Wittenberg, who was actually CEO of the Roadrunners when I was racing. And as the announcers were talking first in the men's race, I mean, both races were brilliant races. But as the announcers were talking in the men's race, they were saying, can't remember when there's been a close finish like this. And Mary and I both looked at each other because, of course, in 2005, I don't know if you remember this, but Henrik Ramala of South Africa, who'd won it the previous year, and Paul Tergat were locked in battle the whole way up. In this case, it was slightly different because Matiso came back and he gained ground up that final hill. These two were locked in battle all the way up the final hill, right to the line. And it was literally on the line by 0.1 of a second that Tergat was given that victory. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, at least one of them ended up on the floor. They actually dove across the line. It was they were so keen to get to that finish line, and this one was a little bit more Matiso kind of almost not sneaking up on Kipruto, because the stadium announcers and the finish announcers were making it very clear that he was closing ground, and I'm sure that was giving him a huge amount of adrenaline, and Kipruto just managed to find enough to kind of stay ahead. But it was a phenomenal race. And on the women's side, course record, first 3 under the course record. And that was stunning. Helena Beery coming out on top there and kind of launching her trademark push up that final hill, and that was enough to get her ahead of Sharon Lokedi and take it below 2:20. And that, incidentally, I think it was 2:20:30 something of Margaret Okayo had stood as the course record since 2003, so had withstood all of the super shoe charge until this point. So it just shows the caliber of that record, and just kind of in comparison how much tougher the New York City Marathon course is. So for anybody looking at their time and trying to compare it with others, please don't. Please only compare it with that course, because it is a very special marathon, but it is one of the tough ones in terms of time-wise on that course.
Well, I think that brings us nicely to quickly mention 2 British athletes that had incredible debuts in Jess Judd and Pat Diva. Pat Diva finishing 4th in 2:08 high, and Jess Judd was, I forget,
She was
7th, sorry, just behind
Sifan Hassan.
Sifan, that's right, and she ran 2:24. I mean, exactly to your point, these are debuts on tough courses. It's what on earth are they going to do when they get on a London or a Valencia or something like that? It's really exciting.
It is. It's so. I mean, I was looking at some of the stuff on social media, and someone pointed out that actually Paddy Diva and Emile Caress have been racing together, very closely matched all the way kind of up through the junior ranks. And so this kind of does hint Paddy been able to step up to that level of success that we've seen Emile enjoy at the Olympics. Yes, things didn't go according to plan for him in Tokyo, but we know there is a lot of promise in Emile Caress. It's really encouraging to see that we now have kind of a plethora almost coming through of strength in the marathon, and they will push each other on, and that is really, really great to see. And of course, for Jess to bounce back from the health difficulties that she's had and to run that strongly on that course, and I have to say, judge it phenomenally as well. She didn't get caught up into going too much with it in the early stages. She very much ran even splits, whereas one thing to quickly knock back on, but Helena Beery ran 68 something for the second half of that course. So she ran very substantial negative splits.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of the few true races that we see. I mean, obviously, also because there's no pacemakers, which also helps. But I think we've become so removed from looking at a race and looking at time trialing that sometimes I see, and this is not I'm not knocking it, but sometimes we can see an athlete talk about the time more than their position.
Yeah,
and I think that's fine to a certain extent, but there's something amazing about just finishing 7th and Pat just missing out on a podium. The times are brilliant, don't get me wrong, but it's just lovely to see these races that are happening, and how Helen, like you say, negative split, and to make it a great race. And I think that's one of the reasons why New York will continue to stand out as a great race above a lot of marathons. So, but
absolutely. I mean, I think the other 2 things to point out quickly there are quick shout out to Fanula McCormack as well.
Oh, yes.
Finished 9th in the World Championships, bounced back with a 10th place in New York. Phenomenal recovery, and still hitting it out of the park with 3 kids trailing around after her. And I'm not going to mention her age, but she's been at that top level for a long time and is still performing phenomenally. And the other point that I was going to...
Can I just quickly say, she's one of my favourite people. I love her. I just think Finola, I just love her.
She's a lovely lady.
She's amazing. Yeah. But anyway, sorry, carry on.
No, the other point I was going to make was that actually that beating of the course record, that smashing of the course record, came about because Sifan Hassan was in the race, I think.
Yes.
It was the way they had to run. So the trio kind of worked together in terms of Helen O'Beary, Sharon Lokedi and Sheila Tep-Karui worked together to break Sifan Hassan by making it hard, pushing hard, from before halfway in that race and turning that screw. Fiona O'Keeffe did a brilliant job of hanging in for a long, long time as well. And we were treated to an exciting race where, tantalizingly, Sifan Hassan kept making it back, almost a la Race in London Marathon, but not quite able to capitalize on that. And they still had enough strength to pull away from her, perhaps because of what had been taken out of the tank in Sydney. And perhaps also, I know she was struggling a little bit just with the fact that she got a period race day, which doesn't always help. But it's exciting for the future.
I'm glad she let you told everyone that. You're going to talk to it. You're going to interview her though soon, aren't you?
She is, yeah.
So that's something to look. I mean, we're talking about getting Hassan for a while, but it'd be really good to like kind of hear from her and everything. She's a very interesting athlete, and she's a real trailblazer in the sport. I mean, with her multiple events at major championships, getting on the podium, she's a real kind of standout personality, isn't she?
Yeah. And so, in fact, we are going to be sitting down with Sifan around that weekend of the Nike After Dark Tour, which is the 22nd, 23rd of November. So any questions that you want to ask directly to Sifan, you can, of course, send in as you can the normal way to us for that weekly shakeout, which, don't forget, drops, sponsored by HIGH5 now every Thursday. And the WhatsApp number is +44 7564 747 914. You can email any questions into Paula's Run Club at momentumbroadcast.co.uk, and of course on socials at Paula's Run Club. We would love to hear from you in whatever shape or form and try and answer those questions. Now, seeing as we have been talking about marathons, and there have been a lot of those going on, and some more probably to pop up on the Honours Board reflections later, let's crack on into this chat with Wendy Rogers, HIGH5 nutrition expert, fueling expert, and she's going to help answer those queries and give us all that information on the best way to recover and the best way to get yourself ready for those marathons. A huge welcome to this section of the podcast, and we welcome back Wendy Rogers. Amazing last time on hydration, all of your tips, and I know a lot of the listeners have really put those into action. You did promise us you'd come back and kind of hit hard that fueling segment, fueling information section, and I'm conscious that a lot of listeners are maybe coming off the back of marathons and want to look at the fueling for that going into recovery process, and then are also thinking about spring marathons, and we'll be starting to think about, where do I turn to? Is it best to do gels? Is it best to do drinks? How do I carb load? And so I'm hoping we're going to touch on all of your expertise in those areas. Please, thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me back. Happy to help.
So shall we kick off with that recovery one first? Seems it's fairly apt. I mean, I was in New York. A lot of listeners might have run the New York Marathon at the weekend, or other ones in the last couple of weeks. How soon should you, or can you, start kind of optimizing that recovery by really topping up your fueling?
The window is surprisingly short, actually, by research standards. And usually, as you come off the back of your sort of very intense exercise, fueling should be sort of picking up in the first hour or so, even half hour or so, just to try and get that replacement into the bloodstream, into the muscles, and just sort of start to build your glycogen levels back up again. I think it also sort of helps stop the body from going into a sort of shock or panic after that kind of endurance exercise. It's usually helpful. The carbohydrate reloading is helpful alongside a protein reloading as well. So your body, any exercise will cause sort of intentional damage to the muscles that need sort of repairing. It's how our muscles grow anyway. They sort of break and repair stronger each time. And so the combination of protein with a carbohydrate source that's relatively fast is generally the best way for recovery to happen. We tend to use sort of whey protein isolates, and we do have a vegan version which is sort of pea protein and a few other sort of vegetable proteins. But you're looking for the type of protein that has a balanced, sort of fairly high on essential amino acids, like focusing on the ones that are called branched chain amino acids. That's the ones that your body specifically uses for rebuilding its muscle. But some people seem to want to just hit pure protein afterwards, but it can't just be that. Your body needs to replenish its carbohydrate sources as well. It's very important.
And it's okay if they're separate. I'm thinking back to when I was racing. I used to have a protein actually it was like a chicken soup type thing. It was
Yeah.
even warm. And I would have that within 5 minutes of finishing the intense activity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But carb loading would have been, and carb topping up would have been carrying on during the marathon itself. And I would also have that alongside. So that's okay. It doesn't have to be in the same
No, it
meal
doesn't
or
have to be an
drink.
all-in-one shake or something. As long as within like an hour or so of finishing up, you're getting sort of both of those things into you one way or another. So
And it's
yeah,
an hour, is it rather? Because I was told 20 minutes.
I mean, I'm sort of giving that as a loose bracket. I think the one, like our recovery drink specifies sort of within half hour ideally, but I understand that not everyone's got someone sort of waiting at the finish line with all the things that they need. So like sooner the better, really. Like 20 minutes will give time for the adrenaline to wear off, at which point you can start eating, which is why 20 minutes is probably the earliest point at which it's possible to start imbibing that. So 30 minutes is sort of what most of the products related to recovery will say on them. But I think for people who've got to sort of get back to a hotel room or anything like that, it's just as soon as you can reasonably do it. So
And I think a lot of the races now are very good in terms of in the goodie bag. They will have maybe a banana. They will have basic things that you can get something into you. And after a marathon, I'm okay in saying that people are okay kind of basically stuffing their faces with whatever they can get their hands on
I'm
in the
sure,
24 hours afterwards, and rewarding yourself as well.
Yeah, I mean we do recovery bars for that, like purpose, because that you're getting off the end of the marathon. You probably might not want another shake at that point, or depends on your preference or whatever. And bars obviously can be sort of stuffed in pockets, or partners at the end can have those ready for you to just sort of shovel in. I imagine after a marathon you feel famished.
But so, because obviously, I think at the moment what's becoming very apparent that idea of finishing a marathon, you would generally not think about doing a huge amount for 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks post marathon. But more and more people, I mean, I work with an athlete at the moment who's asking me, he's only 10 days post marathon now, and is thinking about when he could run a 5K. But I feel like there's a reflection of that kind of 24, 48-hour window. I know you get it in. There's so much stuff out there now to really help with the recovery process that those, I know you're saying half an hour, but if you think about it as a 24, 48 hours, you can really get back into running a lot quicker, because there's a lot more out there to help us do that, right?
Yeah, so the repair process can be sped up more. So the immediate sort of finish of the marathon needs replenishment of your glycogen stores. But that, if you've got the right stuff into you, that should happen fairly quickly. And then you should be sort of back up to energy stores. And then what you're looking to repair is your muscles and stuff. So that's where the protein comes in more heavily over the next sort of few days following that, if you can keep that topped up. And again, good source of the protein. Sometimes like specific sources of amino acids, like L-glutamine is one that can be helpful for like specifically repairing muscles. Like it just saturates your body in the components that it needs to start that repair process and move it faster. Like I noticed since starting to use protein supplements after exercise, I used to, for several days afterwards, get all sorts of like muscle aches. It just feels like the muscles are tense and tired. And that I noticed sort of dropped off much quicker with the right protein, because I never had a particularly high protein diet. I wasn't massively, like, if I was looking for food, it would be pasta or potato or things like that, and I wasn't really sort of picking up my protein levels very well. It does really make a difference, a surprisingly quick difference. Like the first time that I even sort of took a protein shake after doing sort of a session at the gym, it noticeably meant I could just sort of move the next day without feeling all stiff and creaky. So I think that will help someone who's trying to get back to running quickly following a marathon.
What about alongside that? I mean, I know because obviously something like the marathon creates a lot of inflammation as well as that muscle damage.
Yeah.
So what about things like omegas and vitamin D in terms of kind of helping to mop up that inflammation and kind of enable your body, I guess, to use the recovery shakes that much more effectively?
You should be ideally rolling vitamin D and omega-3s and magnesium sort of constantly anyway. If you don't take those things and then sort of suddenly take them following the marathon, they might help a bit, but really those are something that they're vitamins and oils that build up in the system over time. So you'll want to have been taking them sort of consistently on a daily basis in order to get the full benefit from them at any time that whether you're sort of running or recovering or whatever like that. That needs to be ideally a consistent intake for a person to really see the benefit. But yeah, they are very important for just across the board, really. Like you could go on and on about all the different things that omegas and vitamin D, that the whole body sort of functions various different ways with these things. So yeah, highly recommended.
I know we're not, we're more focusing on the fueling side of things and the hydration previously, but obviously when you finish a marathon, you are lacking, you've depleted your fuel, but I assume drinking to complement fueling, getting the fueling back in your system is important to kind of not just take on just pure proteins and carbs, but also liquid with that to enable your body to absorb those things better.
You must maintain your hydration, absolutely. Obviously, there's the type of hydration that you'd maintain while running when you're actively losing sodium through sweating, and then there's a type of hydration that you'd maintain when you're sort of at rest and not losing that. But without that hydration there, even being able to sort of properly process or digest your food becomes difficult. And I think we mentioned last time that hydration, when it comes to sort of all your joint pain and recovery and things like that, your water is also your lubrication for that, and having sufficient amounts of that in there will help alleviate sort of the aches and pains following that. But it's, again, similar to the omegas and other things, like constantly rolling your hydration at the right level. Like whether we're exercising or not, we need that, and it will make a difference if we get that right.
And I do remember, as we're talking about that, I know we're jumping around a little bit, but I clearly remember when you were advising us in the previous series and we were talking about carb loading, you really emphasized how important it was to hydrate alongside the carb loading, because you do need that hydration to lock the glycogen into your muscles and top up your reserves.
They go hand in hand, and if you're trying to process too much fueling without enough hydration to it, then that's when the overheat might start. So yeah, you need to be able to keep your sort of coolants going while you're imbibing a large amount of fuel while you're running.
Which leads us on, I guess, to a question that I had raised to me. We had an amazing turnout on the shakeout in New York, and thank you to everyone that came along there. One of the runners did mention to me that they were kind of really full up on the amount of pasta that they were trying to eat to load up their carb reserves, to fully carb load going into the marathon. It is okay to access gels and drinks as well, isn't it? In fact, it might even load up that glycogen more efficiently.
Yes, I mean, if you're taking on the gels and drinks while you're not sort of immediately exercising, then you might see a slight increase in sort of insulin spikes as you're sort of loading that. But I'd say, so when we do a gel while we're running, we usually just knock the whole thing back. Because we're trying to get that in very fast. Same with the energy drinks and stuff, we'll be knocking it back quite fast. Whereas on the loading process, you could just be sort of creeping that in gently. You don't have to be knocking the whole gel back at once, or you could be just sort of sipping on your energy drink and stuff. So you're creeping it into the system. You're not pouring a load on you at once so that it goes to insulin, because you've got sort of different. The insulin that you release as you get the sugar into your bloodstream, as glucose rises, will start to push things into the liver cells and muscle cells first as glycogen, and then any excess that will start to try and push into fat cells for long-term storage. If you've suddenly flooded yourself, then some of it will go to glycogen, but it might also be directed to fat cells. So you're looking to try and sort of creep in gradually, which is why people move towards things like potato and carbs and stuff, because they're slow release. Yeah. So if you've got slow release carbs and you've got fast release carbs, you can trickle the fast release carbs into you at a rate that means that you don't spike.
And are there different drinks available? I'm just thinking back, and albeit 20 odd years to when I was running marathons, I had two different carb drinks. One that was during the race, which I'm guessing is going to be the faster release carbs that you're talking about there.
Yeah.
And then one that I would use to carb load on. And that was also the one that I would start drinking immediately post race to help accelerate recovery.
Okay.
I mean, I think it was just a higher, would it make sense it was higher in a different type of sugar?
Yeah, I mean, it could be that. Or even the most refined sugars still have slightly variable rates of entrance to the body and different routes that they enter the body as well. So it could be one, like it might have been a fructose or something sort of beforehand.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that goes in and it hits your bloodstream fast, but it needs to go via the liver to be converted before it can be used as glucose. And so there's like its glycemic index is slower because of that. Okay. So that it's sweet, but it's still sort of a low GI style thing. So it's in there ready to be used, and it'll start to sort of trickle through to the system in a more gradual way. So we use quite often a mix of maltodextrin, which is fast. I think 2 parts of that to 1 part fructose, so that you've got like the fast stuff hitting, and then the fructose sort of ready in the background to pick up as that initial fast hit wears off.
So in a pre-race scenario, you got a couple of days before a marathon, and obviously you're reducing your training, so the demands from day to day is kind of reduced because you're getting ready. I know some people use a kind of an idea where they eat their normal meal, like they were with their training, which obviously they reduce their demand, but they'll add in one of those drinks you're talking about just to top up. Would you say that's kind of a good way of doing it, or would you say in the couple of days that to really there is a balance between loading up and slightly overdoing it, and you're just feeding your fat cells, which aren't necessarily going to help you on race day?
It'll be a balance that's very sort of individually dependent, I suppose. People have different rates of metabolism. People have different rates of insulin release. We hear phrases sort of thrown around like carb sensitivity and stuff, which is how sort of rapidly your body will respond to that. So there is an element of trial and error, I think, where people need to sort of test things and figure out what suits them most and how quickly they can take it on, and just the level of storage that they've got available to them, which will be dependent on their bulk of muscle and the health of their liver and other sorts of odd things that you can't easily anticipate. So yeah, I think, and it's why we say about sort of fueling and training beforehand, like you're looking to sort of test that. And even before you do your full marathon, you might want to sort of test out what your loading seems like sort of in training previous to that, just to get a feel for how much your stomach can take and how you feel after a loading attempt and whether that's sort of working for you or not.
So I was going to say, just to finish that point, so would you recommend, you wouldn't recommend necessarily all just food or all just drinks? Mixing it is probably a good balance to it's almost like as an insurance policy that you're getting enough fuel through the food as if a race day.
For sure. I think in general, when it comes to carb sources and protein sources and stuff, we are designed as omnivores to eat varied diets, and we're geared towards that. So anything that we're doing, the broader spectrum that we can have, whether that's in like the medium that it's accessed, like solid food or liquid, and then the different variants of that. Like if you can load with pasta and potato and sweet potato, and like the more variety you've got, the more options you're giving your body to bring the stuff in that it decides that it needs.
Yeah. So sticking with, I mean, we will talk about fueling and training that fueling system through the training program. Sticking with race day itself, what's the ideal timing wise? I mean, bearing in mind a lot of people have to travel out to the start line, maybe hang around for quite a bit there. What's the ideal time before they should be looking for the solid meal? So kind of a breakfast in, and then obviously keep sipping on things, keep chewing on energy chews, and right up to the event itself. But what are we talking about? 3-4 hours, or
at least 2 hours, ideally sort of 3-4 hours if you can. But I understand that race days usually start quite early. So, but I mean, it's like what you're told as a kid about sort of not exercising immediately after eating or something. You know, like you're always told if you're just eating food, you can't swim for an hour or so or something because it mucks up the sort of system. So it's similar to that. You don't want your body to still be using its energy to digest anything significant, because the digestion process itself is quite energy intensive. And so to try and sort of digest at the same time as running, like you're sort of stretching your resources in two different places. Like when you're running, you want the main blood flow, the oxygenated blood, to be at your extremities for your muscles to use. But when you're digesting, it's natural for your body to sort of redirect its blood flow to your sort of organs for the digestion process, the absorption, and getting everything sort of moved around and sorted out. So you don't want those two processes running at once if you can possibly help it.
Okay.
So would there be, again, I assume you did, Paula, but you'd have your mid-race drink an hour before as well, wouldn't you? Because I know I would have a similar drink to what I'd have in the race in the hour before. But I'm very conscious that we're taking around 2 hours of exercise. So having an energy drink an hour before the race, that means I'll finish 3 hours later, roughly, just over. But for those that take 4 or 5 hours, so if they took a drink an hour before, that's 6 hours since that. And I'm just wondering, is it better to look at the time you're taking to gauge when the right time to take? And actually, sometimes it might be, if you are someone that's looking to 5 hours to 6 hours, that's taking on this fueling, might be better to delay it a bit while you're even in the race rather than before the race.
That would make sense, and it's certainly time that should be looked at rather than distance. That the distance to your body is kind of irrelevant, really. It doesn't necessarily sort of know how far it's traveling. It just knows the length of time that it's doing the exercise for, and will require fueling up to that point. So yeah, whatever your anticipated time is, you'll want to be fueling with that in mind, rather than trying to sort of copy what someone else is doing for the same distance but different time.
So that leads us really well into a question that we get asked a lot in terms of, how do I judge, if I'm going to take gels, how do I judge how often I consume those gels? I mean, we've had people, I know Nicola Carragher talked about the fact that she was actually told she was over fueling, she was taking in too much. So would you look to time rather than distance? I mean, the standard elites do is 5K, every 5K for some kind of fuel.
So I suppose for elites, because you're expected to be meeting a certain time per 5K, it seems like it's distance-based, but I think it's still because it's expected that you'll be within a certain amount of time for that. Which I assume, how long will it take you guys to do 5K usually? Is that?
Between 15 and 20 minutes, depending on elite male, elite female. But yeah, somewhere in that range.
That's roughly what I thought. So every 20 minutes is the guidelines for the HIGH5 gels.
Okay.
So, and that compares nicely to what you were sort of suggested to do for the elite side of things. So yeah, it's about that sort of timing. And again, there is variability by person. So like it should be around that, but there's still an element of allowing people to sort of test and see how much they need that, and at what point they want to start taking gels in the run. If they've just done all of their carb loading before the race, then maybe for the first hour or so they feel like they've got enough, or they don't want to sort of top up in the first 40 minutes or so, and then they pick up from there once they've run a bit of the energy off.
That's the way I did it when I came back this year, because I never used gels. They weren't at a high enough level when I was really competing. I just stuck to the drinks. But when I came back to run the marathons this year, that's pretty much exactly what I would go, about an hour in, and then I would start topping up with the gels. That then it's easier to carry that amount as well. I guess the other question that I was going to ask you is, we know it's important to stay really well fueled during the training cycle, during the hard work, but I always used to include fasted runs in my training as well. Actually came about somewhat by accident, because I was at university and I was a student trying to fit everything in. So basically jumping out of bed and getting my morning run done was the most efficient way to get things in. When I came to the marathon, I found that what that had then done is prep my body quite well to function on low fuel.
Interesting. It does make sense. It makes sense in the same way as sort of anaerobic training makes sense and stuff. Like you're looking to get the body used to being under stress, so that probably towards the end of the marathon, where you're running low on fuel, your body's got practice operating under that condition. It makes sense. It's similar to, it's similar to sort of high altitude training or anything where you've chosen to put your body under not ideal conditions, and get it used to being there, so that when you hit that point in your marathon, it's not a shock to the system.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see value in that for sure. There's also been a fair bit of good health related to fasting at times too. So I think that's
I mean, just for clarity, for anybody who's thinking about trying it, that wouldn't be for a hard workout. That would just be for a run. And it is really important to refuel within that 10-20 minute window of finishing it, because your body is kind of crying out for some nutrition there.
Well, you'll certainly notice if you don't sort that out. There'll be shakes, headaches, bruisiness. So yeah, I mean,
I won't talk about one of my London Marathon experiences linked to all of that. Anyway, that's another point. It's a 2-point thing, Wendy. I would use a tactic of mixing drinks and gels. So I'd alternate them during the race, partly for the stomach, partly because I wanted different requirements from the drinks and things. But that was made possible because I was an elite and I had drinks put out on tables, and so I could do that. So I guess what I want to know is, for people that don't have tables and not necessarily have a support team, like what around you as a brand try to do to help kind of offset the fact that someone might want to mix gels with drinks, but they have to kind of do it themselves. And then the other part to that is kind of the kind of amounts, like whether you're taking 4 hours or 2 hours, the total amount you want to take on, very much dependent on you as an athlete versus what's ideal because of how much we can tolerate.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys will be, as elite athletes, you'll be used to probably sort of taking on more fuel, or what that does to the stomach or so, but also you'll be taking less time. So I think what people who are taking a long time sort of will find that they still need to sort of carry or be using more than you guys do, and they'll need to figure out sort of where they want to sit with that. I mean, I still think that the mixture between taking on drinks and taking on gels would be preferable. We have known some people to just sort of mix a gel into their drinks before, but we do tend to sort of make them so that they're balanced without being mixed together. We've started doing these like silica gel sachets, like reusable ones that you can fit multiple gels into before the race. So you're only carrying one thing, yeah. And they're great because, I mean, they don't make so much sort of waste, you know. And we do like the refill gel bottles. They look like sort of squeezy bottles full of gel, so you're not less single-use plastic, which is nice. And it just means that in one flask you can be carrying multiple gels more easily. That's handy. So you can probably get that and a bottle in hand at once, I suppose. Still seems like a fair bit to be trying to sort of carry with you, I suppose.
I mean, that's one of the advice that we give is most marathons will provide drinks en route. So it's always a good idea to read the information, find out which drink is being supplied on the course, and try that one. And if you get on with that one, that massively reduces the amount of stuff you have to carry with you. So that's why I guess some people, as Tom was saying, they might take their gels and just rely on taking even just water if they don't know with the
that makes sense. I mean, and also if you get water at each station and don't have to carry that, then I mean, we have our zero tablets are too light for a marathon run, but we are bringing out a 0+ range, which is like sachet powder, already sort of measured out. So if you were carrying a few sort of light powder sachets, then as you hit the water station, you'd be able to just sort of add those to your water and use them, and so you're not carrying that weight. And yeah, we've certainly sort of geared them more towards quite intense exercise. So yeah, the new, I think it's called the triple strength zero, I think. I know the product well, but you know, when the names change through development.
Leave that to marketing. Leave that to marketing. You're just what goes into it.
I just know what goes into it. But yeah, that's like the strongest sort of hydration mix that we've made before. That's got a very high amount of sodium and is designed to be taken only sort of mid-race under those conditions. You know, like other times you might be able to use things sort of sat at your desk like our zero effervescence. But this is not something that you'd use for sort of sitting around. It really is the most intense sort of point of the run. So,
which I guess comes at a great point for me to put in a question. I know we're not supposed to put questions directly to guests, but this one came in from Wayne in Luxembourg, and he had done some research and had found out that the average sodium loss is 1,000 milligrams per hour. For a runner during a marathon. And so he's also worked out that with his electrolytes, with his gels, with salt chews, he's still not getting close to that amount in per hour. And his question was, does he need to worry about trying to hit that amount, or can he focus on just keeping his levels topped up to get through the marathon?
I would say topped up is sufficient. You don't need to directly replace everything that you've lost. Like, your body keeps its own buffer, so don't fret about it. But trying to get close to that is still helpful. And as I say, the triple strength zero, I think it's got 2.5 times the amount of sodium that we'd usually put in other stuff. So it's probably meeting sort of 400, 500 milligrams. Top of my head, I can't quite remember. So it's getting a high amount. And again, that's why it's not for just sitting at your desk. But it should be sort of designed to replace that magnitude of sodium loss. It is also worth noting that 1,000 milligrams lost per hour is an average across studies, and humans vary quite a lot. Like, very few people will actually sit at that average. Like, we're more likely to vary from it, but that's just the middle sort of score between lots of people tested. So it's worth probably not trying to go right up to that, just in case you're someone who is naturally slightly under that. I know you can get, I think you guys will have had this done, you can get sweat tests and stuff
testing.
to see how much
but
you're
there are
losing.
also, correct me if I'm wrong, you can also do your basic at-home test. If you're someone that finishes a run in the summer and you have white streaks,
oh, for sure, that's
then
fairly
that's a
obvious,
sign
isn't
you're
it?
losing a lot, right?
Yes, that's fairly obvious. You can't quantify that, but you'd be able to look at that and go like, oh, I'm definitely someone who needs more, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if this sounds shocking or not, but I did a sweat test and we weighed myself before or after to see how much I'd lost. And in a session that was 2 hours, it was fairly intensive, but it was a winter, so it wasn't even summer. And I lost, I think it was 2.5 kilograms in weight.
Yeah.
Wow.
In 2 hours, so I'm a heavy sweater. Really
I think
heavy.
I'm the other end.
Are you?
Because I know I did testing in a heat chamber, and I'm actually I lose a reasonable amount, but not an excessive amount. So, but in terms of actually it sitting on my skin, I was very efficient. But that's more of a fitness thing. But I was towards the lower end, certainly, of the body weight lost.
Yeah.
But that's not something you can train, is it, Wendy? That's something that is genetic.
That's fairly innate, yeah. That's just how each of us is. There's not much that we can do to sort of differ that. But it is worth noting that even without training or exercise, obviously you're doing that in a sort of intense session and being weighed before and after. But people who are trying to sort of diet and lose weight often get disheartened because they see their weight fluctuate up and down. And actually, an awful lot of time, it's water weight. Like the chocolate bar you ate last night can't possibly have put 2 kilos on you. Like, you've woken up in the morning and you're carrying water weight. But the mind, if you're watching the scales every day and stuff, it will sort of fret and assume that the weight loss, that the daily scale change is important, when actually it's the sort of weekly, monthly average that's important for that. So we do expect there to be more so for women than for men as well, because our monthly cycles change our water weight and what we're carrying too. So yeah, you expect there to be fluctuation there at all times.
And to get it back, sorry, Tom.
I was just going to go back quickly just to cover off the during the race stuff with mixing, because I feel like this is a common thing that people ask the question around, is tolerating the heavy consumption of fueling during a race, because it is quick release, it's fast release, and that can have consequences for people for a variety of different reasons. And I feel like mixing that is something that helps. But is there things that you can suggest to people that to look at of how they can help themselves tolerate more? Because I know someone said about they only take on jelly babies. I think we had she really couldn't take on gels. Others stick to I know that HIGH5 do a more watery base than a gloopy, because gloopy can be, so just from your point of view, things that people can think about to help settle the stomach, even if it's taking water on during the race, anything.
And can you train that during the build-up period? So by basically upping the
Don't
amount
overload her, Paula.
No, I'm just saying it kind of leads into the same thing. Like what I'm saying is it something that can be trained? Can you train your body to absorb more in the marathon itself by making it get used to it in training?
I don't know that you can train it to absorb more. I suppose mostly what you can train it to do is become more familiar with what it's taking on board, so that it doesn't sort of freak out or just sort of vent things through.
Yeah.
Because that's the main risk, isn't it? That you don't want your body to suddenly decide it wants nothing in it at all. So, I mean, our aqua gels are popular as a sort of nice midway between a drink and a gel. And I think aqua gel sort of combined with the silica sort of multi-gel thing makes them a bit more sort of manageable as well, because they're watery, so you don't want to sort of spray things all over your hands and stuff.
Yeah.
So they're a nice sort of interim. But even if you were to look at other brands of gels, like there's a lot of different ones out there. They all differ. And so while I am fond of HIGH5, obviously, I wouldn't grudge anyone testing out other brands and gels that might use thickeners, they might use pectins, they might use other things that for some might, like I find any thickeners on my stomach doesn't help at all, but for some that might help to feel more stable as they're going. Like it's a very individual choice, and the only way you're going to be able to make it well is by testing everything that you've got out there and seeing what works best for you.
And on that, I guess that brings us into caffeine. And it is a question that comes up a lot. Should I take caffeine during the race? Because it can provoke GI type effects. And I know some people like to do that maybe an hour or so before the marathon. I like to do that so you kind of get things moving before you start racing. But actually within the race itself, is it something that you should try out in training and see whether you tolerate?
Please try it in training before you do anything on race day. I cannot emphasize this enough. Even if like you feel like you're flagging towards the end and someone offers you one, like it's never a good time to try something new on race day. So if you're thinking about that, then check yourself beforehand. If you're someone who has a bit of trouble sort of getting your legs under you at the start and want a bit of a boost, then that would make sense. I also have heard about people who, when they're flagging towards the end, will save their caffeine gel for the last hour or so to try and get them through the last little bit. It affects the central nervous system directly, but that differs for lots of different people. For some people, it's a very cerebral effect, and it's just focus based, and for other people, it's a more physical effect and gives energy. So without having tested it, you don't really know what that's going to do to you, and if it's going to be of any help at all. Like if I were to use caffeine in any circumstances, all that happens is that I break a cold sweat and get palpitations. It's never going to be useful for me ever, really. When I'm designing caffeine products, I have to get other people to taste test them for me because I can't really handle that. So, yeah, a very individual choice. And if you are making that choice, consider that it does dehydrate you more. So factor that into your hydration and look for options for caffeine that carry some liquid with them. So maybe a caffeine gel or a caffeine sort of fluid, rather than, I know you can get like caffeine slips and tablets and chews and things, but I don't think they're hydrating you enough, while you're pulling that into the system.
How much caffeine is in a gel, generally speaking, compared to a cup of coffee? What is the general, like, what in your gels, how much is there? Do you know?
They're about the same. I mean, obviously it depends on the coffee, but the coffee is usually 75 milligrams, I think.
Depends on where you go.
Instant can be 60. I think it goes up to. It also depends on the size of your cup.
I'm trying to recall how much we've got in ours. I think for some of them it's the same as a cup of coffee, and then there's like a slightly higher version of that too, where it's more like sort of double that or approaching that. So yeah, we've got caffeine gels, and then we've got caffeine hit, which is more intense. I mean, caffeine in liquid form without sort of coffee around it isn't the nicest tasting of things. So when we've done our caffeine hits, we've usually sort of had to load them with more flavor than we usually would. So like it's usually either a raspberry flavor, which is quite sort of masking, or a tropical flavor, which again is quite masking. But we can't mask it entirely. I mean, to be honest, I imagine once you're sort of on race day, your taste buds aren't really particularly fussy about what you're having anyway.
But I'm wondering if that could be why some people think they get an upset stomach from the caffeine gels. Could it be that it's actually the flavorings that? Because it's one of the things I noticed, that the gels now are much better than the caffeine gels 20 years ago. And could that be because they were trying to mask the flavoring and it was actually that?
It could be. I think also the quality of caffeine has improved over the years in its sort of format as a pure sort of substance. I think in the past you had a lot of synthetic sources of caffeine, and now you see a lot more natural sources of caffeine. I mean, when I say we've heightened the flavoring, we still don't particularly use much flavoring. We'll have just increased the amount of fruit juice in it to try and compensate for that. We'll still be at the same pH, so we've not increased acidity. But I suppose the stronger fruit juice aspect, if you're someone who's a bit sensitive to fruits, then that might have a difference.
Well,
I'm still more inclined to assume that it is the caffeine that's upsetting the stomach, if anything. So
okay. And what about? I was more thinking that that might have been a reason why people in the past would have been put off the caffeine because of the amount loaded in.
Yeah.
But I guess the other question was the benefits, and it kind of is linked to fueling, kind of not. But there used to be a myth that caffeine would actually help you burn fat as a fuel. Is that true or false? Is that just a complete myth?
I don't see how that could be true. By making a person jittery, it might mean that they're sort of using more energy, and if they run out of energy, then the body will start to sort of pick and burn fat. But as for it sort of causing you to directly sort of select fat over your glycogen stores, I don't think so.
I thought it was more linked to, Paula, just you're on an empty stomach, so you have coffee as a way to kind of suppress the hunger that you're feeling, and then your body's doing the rest. So it's not necessarily converting it, but it's just easier to handle an empty stomach with caffeine than not. Yeah, but
it encourages fasting that might help to pull things sort of down a bit. It's the same. It was similar with things like the raspberry ketone flurry a few years back that I believe has now probably been banned. But yeah, anything that's got that stimulant effect will suppress appetite.
What was that? I didn't heard of it. Raspberry ketones.
Raspberry ketones, yeah, it's an extract from raspberry. You're allowed to use it in flavouring processes, but for a while it's able to be sort of sold directly, and there's just a ketone section of raspberry that's approaching the effects of amphetamine, with all of the dangers that you would associate with amphetamine. So often things that hit the dieting scene can be dangerous, like to get fast effects of weight loss is
you're much better off just running a marathon.
Absolutely.
Wow, I didn't know about that. So it was basically it was a quick hit to lose weight, but it had effectively I don't know what's the definition of amphetamine then, if I said it right.
A stimulant, isn't it?
Yeah, stimulant. Yeah. So
so it's like in the early marathons, they would put strychnine in their final bottles. It's rat poison, isn't it?
Rat poison?
But they would put a small amount of that in I'm talking about the 1900s. They would put a small amount there just to give them a jolt to get them through the last bit of the race. Which is, a very brutal way to do it. We're much kinder now with all the fueling that we can offer you.
Rat poison to get to the end. Oh, my word.
The difference between a poison and a drug is its dosage.
Oh.
So the tiny bit they're putting in would have been in drug levels. Still bad for you, but not intended to actually.
It's true, isn't it? Because even water is toxic in high doses.
Oh yeah, you can desalinate yourself to death. So anything, moderation is the key.
Does make sense. Thank you so much, Wendy. Very conscious that we've pushed your time limit. But you have, again, given us so much valuable information to everyone out there. I would like to ask you if we can get in touch if we have any specific questions that
Oh, certainly.
we would reach out to you for your expert input on that. And we will have a series of shorts coming out as well for people. So if you do have a question for Wendy that we'll pass on to her, you can, of course, use the WhatsApp number, which is +44 7564 747 914, or get in touch via the email paulasrunclub@momentumbroadcast.co.uk, or on socials indeed, or directly to Wendy via the HIGH5 socials. Thank you so much again, Wendy. Lots to digest there and to use to full advantage for everybody thinking about recovery and also thinking about getting ready for their next marathon.
Thanks very much
Thank you,
for having
Wendy.
me.
Well, that was really informative as ever, Tom. I feel like we could keep doing episodes on this with Wendy and kind of topping up that information pot in terms of what works. And yeah, excited to see how people take that on board in terms of using those tips on fueling to make sure that you fuel up fully ahead of your marathons and how that works for you.
Yeah, I'm quite excited by their new product as well. I've got to say, testing that because I think the concept of hydration in particular is kind of, I think sometimes people can forget there is our hydration requirements in what we're drinking changes based on during, before, after, and just every day. So, and it all links to the amount of sweat we're obviously doing. So I'm quite excited by this new product and how that might help performance and a lot of athletes. But as interesting as ever, and it's nice to speak to someone who's at the forefront of designing these things. I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, there's marketing, which is the bit we usually get to digest, but we're actually consuming what someone is actually in the lab making, which is really great.
And the other thing is just how much things are improving because of all that research. And we saw it, didn't we, when we did the tour of the factory? We saw just how much science and research and development goes into making sure that that product is as much good for us and fueling our body as good for the environment as well, and lots of other things coming in there. So yeah, I think it was a really informative and look forward to trying out those products, as you said. And it's a very, very good point to move on into the Honours Board, which is, of course, sponsored by HIGH5. And when you do get a shout out on the Honours Board, then we're hoping that that will be some product winging its way to you to help fuel you and hydrate you to better performances. So, Tomo, do you want to kick us off with the first?
Yes, I am. I was literally about to, and my computer fritz, and I panicked. But okay, I've got the first one.
What's fritz?
You never heard the term fritzed? No. Like, as in fritzed out? Like, is that not a term? Have I just made something up then?
It's a Tomo term, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe it is a term.
Everything's a Tomo term. Fritzed out? Is that? Is no one else? Fritz is in like blinked or like a kind of, I don't know. Maybe there's someone called Thomas Fritz, and he kind of maybe
it's Thomas Fritz. It's good anyway. Let's go on in.
Thank you. Well, this isn't from Fritz. This comes in from Tim. Hi, Paul and Tomo. Loving the pod, especially the shift to 2 a week. Thank you very much. It's a lot more work, but we love it. An excellent and uplifting addition to my long runs. I'd like to shout out to Johnny Coe, one of my club mates in Histon and Impington Runners, based just outside Cambridge. He's just completed his target of running 100 half marathons in 2025. 100, raising money for Alex, the leukodystrophy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Raising money. So he's just completed the target of running 100 marathons in 2025, raising money for Alex, the leukodystrophy charity. Leukodystrophy is a rare neurological degenerative condition, and the charity provides a much-needed community for often isolating affected families. Johnny has raised nearly 4,000 and will hopefully more to come. His runs have included Brighton Marathon, the Equinox 24-hour Ultra, when he covered 100k but only counted it as one half. Oh, blimey. So he's run over distance a lot. Wow. Yeah. As a club, we're all in awe of his feat of consistency and injury avoidance. Yeah, me too. Hopefully this qualifies for a spot in the Honours Board. Yes, it does, Tim. So absolutely. Congratulations. He's actually put his fundraising page on here.
Yeah, so I was just going to say we might try and put that up as a link for anybody that's interested to that.
Wow.
But well done, Tim. So the next one is actually a really, really interesting one. This comes in from Niall McKinley, and he talks very openly, and it's really inspirational about the fact that he was abused at school by a teacher and came to terms with it a long time afterwards. He is okay with me sharing this story. I did check with him first. But in April of 2024, a group of them who had been at the same school decided that they were going to go to Everest Base Camp and raise money for the NSPCC. That went really, really well. And then a couple of them decided that they would work together and build towards the London Marathon and continue the fundraising for the NSPCC. They were very lucky in order to be able to get places. And so at the age of 62, he started running in January of this year, joined the local park run, and met some lovely, lovely people there who helped him prepare for the marathon. So long story short, he completed that marathon, raised a huge amount, and more than that, has really highlighted the importance of running for mental health and certainly giving back and making a difference and talking about things, which I think helps coming to terms with that. So mentions lots of things that have pulled together there, and we'll try and put maybe a little bit of that out on our social media post as well. But absolute top nomination to the Honours Board there for Niall, and thanks for getting in touch with your story.
Yeah, that's very powerful.
Dear Paula and Tomo, this comes in from Marty. I wanted to take a moment to express how inspirational and relatable your podcasts are for us everyday runners. Tomo, your humour about lacking talent is always amusing, especially considering the incredible talent you actually showcase in your races. I'd love for you to give a shout out to a local hero from our early morning 5 a.m. run group in Bella, host and runners, and Andy, aka The Ringer. Colin Hughes, who's truly incredible at 61. He's a powerhouse, consistently running easy sub 3 hour marathons, whether it's speed sessions, tempo runs, or marathon training. Colin is always there supporting all of us. And I think he's massively supported Marty through his improvement, helping him to push on and get more out of himself, actually being out in Boston when Marty was there, supporting his wife and helping him get his workouts done while he was still there. So Marty says that he went for it in Manchester. Unfortunately, it was a bit hot. Of course, it was in Manchester, and he twisted his ankle approaching the finish. So he was disappointed, but has nominated Colin for all of his support throughout this. And while he's currently dealing with a stress fracture and bruised bone, they all want to let you know, Colin, how much they miss you. And hopefully these high five goodies on their way to you will help with that recovery process. Rest up and get back to them as soon as possible, because they really miss you. So we pretty much have rattled through that. A huge thank you to HIGH5 for sending Wendy along to help with all of those tips that she put in, and also, of course, for sponsoring the Honours Board. If you want to send a nomination in, please don't forget that number is +44 7564 747 914. You can email in your questions also to Paula's Run Club at momentumbroadcast.co.uk, or get in touch on socials. All of those socials are at Paula's Run Club. This has been a Momentum Broadcast production. Congratulations, and a quick ad to the Honours Board, to every single person who came to the shakeout, and to everybody listening who ran in New York or wherever you ran over the past week. Congratulations to you. Hope those went according to plan, and we will see you next week.
Well, what about the discount code?
Oh, sorry, and the discount code, of course. Good job you're here.
We can't forget that. We can't forget
That's kind of a vital bit, isn't it? It is in the link as well. But head to high5.co.uk and use the discount code Paula25 to get yourself 25% off all of those goodies.
See you later, everyone, and have a good week. And I will see you next week for more Paula's Run Club.